Good morning. Happy almost New Year to everyone. I want to start off by congratulating everyone for migrating from this side to that side. It's a holiday miracle. I don't know what happened. How many of you recognize this image? Which one? 1, 2, or 3? I'll give you a hint. It was 2. 2. Very good. You guys are really good at this. Back to the Future 2. Actually, we were talking about this morning in the Bible class. Which of the movies was better, 1, 2, or 3? And someone mistakenly said the third one was the best one, which is obviously false. Blatantly false. The second one is the best one, unless you're Jim, in which case the first one is the best one, which is almost always the case. I think the second one was the best because we had to wait so long for the second one to come out. And this is one of my favorite scenes is when Marty McFly, he's the main character, he's the protagonist of the story, he's the main guy, he travels to the future and he gets his hands on a sports almanac from 1950 to 2000, which movie was produced before 2000. One of the reasons I picked it, maybe some of y'all seen it. And he gets a sports almanac and he's like, and you think about, well, what would you do if you could know the future, right? What things about the future would you want to know? Maybe what investments to make, right? If you could look ahead at the stock market and see which ones are going to do really well, you might want to see into the future and do that. Well, that's what Marty McFly's plan is. When he gets to the future, he finds this almanac and thinks, when I get back to my original time, I'll be able to magically place all the right bets and make all the money. Of course, as the movie plays out, it's Biff that gets his hands on the almanac and does it, and he creates an alternate timeline which disrupts the space-time continuum. But we're not going to talk about that right now, because that's all fiction. What would you do if you could see into the future? What kind of things would you do if you could see ahead? See what's going to come next. I believe many of us, we kind of live in two different areas of time. Now, a few weeks ago, we dealt with the past. Many of us live in the past, and we're dealing with the past, things that happened to us, things that we did, things that we said, things we saw, whatever it is, we kind of live in the past a bit, but we also live in the future a little bit. The way our mind activity works, because we're always preparing for something that's going to happen next. We're always trying to think ahead. If I do this now, what will happen later? If I invest in this now, what will happen later? If I continue to pay Social Security, will there be Social Security later? Right? These are all questions we have. We're always preoccupied with the past or the future. And we wish we could pull a Marty McFly, get our hands on some certain information about the future so that we can make proper decisions today. Right? That's kind of what we hoped we could do. And so it reminded me of the story of Saul and the Witch of Endor. You've heard me preach on this if you've been around a while. I've preached on this story a few times, and that is because I love this story. I love this story, and I love Saul. Saul was such an interesting guy to read about within Scripture. He's so varied. He's pictured in so many different ways. Sometimes he's someone that's always searching after the will of God. He's always trying to do what God wants. And in other ways, he's always rebelling against the will of God when God tells him something he doesn't want to hear. And at this point in the story, Saul's nearing the end of his life. He doesn't know it, but it's coming to a close. Saul, in his faithfulness, has removed all witches, all mediums. I was going to crack a joke. All mediums, all smalls, all extra smalls. No. I was going to crack that joke, but I didn't because I knew it would be lame. You're welcome. He kicks out all the mediums, the spiritists, the divinators, all the people that aren't supposed to be in the land according to the law, people who will talk to the dead. He's removed all of them from the land in an faithful act to God. But later in his life, he'll be unfaithful to God, and he'll be removed from king eventually. Him and his line. But when that happens, he also stops hearing from God. So no more prophets talk to him. Samuel the prophet, priest, judge, Samuel is dead. His prophet is gone. There's no one to tell him what's going to happen next. Things aren't working the way they used to work. He used to have certain things he would consult and certain things he would do to find out what God wants him to do next. And all of that is gone. And so he does what any reasonable person will do. He will assume that not every medium and not every spiritist has left the camp. He says, okay, I got to find out what's going to happen next. Before I can do anything today, I got to find out what's going to happen tomorrow. That's his plan. And so he goes and he visits the witch of Endor. And like I said, I love this story. And I think about this story quite a bit, actually. 1 Samuel chapter 28. Now Samuel was dead, which I just told you. No surprise there. And all Israel had mourned for him and buried him in his own town of Ramah. Saul had expelled the mediums and spiritists from the land. Now you notice I put two little asterisks there. This is just a nerd note. Mediums and spiritists, in Hebrew it actually says owners of the pit. Sorry, that P came out really strongly. Owners of the pit. Because these mediums and these spiritists, those who would talk to the dead, they would actually do their magic work in the ground. They would be in a pit. They'd own a little pit and they'd do all their magic there. But he had expelled all of them from the land. But now Samuel is dead and he wants to hear from God and he doesn't know what to do. He says, the Philistines assembled and came and set camp at Shunem, while Saul gathered all Israel and set up camp in Gilboa. So there's a battle about to take place. The Philistines are mounted on one side, the Israelites on the other side. There's going to be an epic battle. And you know what Saul wants to know. What would you want to know before you got into a fight? Whether you could win or not. Right? If you had some way of knowing it, now you might be able to guess. I feel like maybe we got a chance. Wouldn't you want to know if you were to take $10,000 of your money? Now, I'm assuming for most of us that would be a good chunk of money. If it's not, come and see me later. I got some plans for you. $10,000. If you could know you could invest it in a sure thing, absolutely, positively, it will double in 4 months. Wouldn't you want to know that that would work? Or wouldn't you want to know, actually, that's a triangle scheme, you're going to get busted? Wouldn't you want to know that before you invested your money? Saul wants to know, before he invests the lives of him and his son and his soldiers in this battle, I want to know we're going to win. Because if we're not going to win, I'm not going to fight. He wants to know the future. But his future teller is dead. And he doesn't know what's going to happen next. That last part I relate to. I don't know what's going to happen next. It's the adventure of life. You never know what's going to happen next. So the two camps are set. Israel versus Philistines. When Saul saw the Philistine army, he was afraid. Terror filled his heart. Because they're a massive army. The Philistines were ancient pirates. They were very, very powerful individuals. Came across on boats and overtook parts of the land. And there they are encamped against them, and Saul is terrified. He inquired of the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him by dreams or Urim, prophets. Right, so he has these three ways of consulting God. He has dreams. Well, that didn't work. No dreams were given to him. He has Urim, which is one of two mystical type stones that he could go to, and that would reveal to him the will of God. It's in Exodus. If you want to read more about it, it's in Elusive God, my book. He goes to the dreams. No dreams. He goes to Urim. It doesn't work. He goes to prophets. The only prophet he really had was Samuel, and Samuel's dead. So now what is he going to do? What is he going to do? What are you going to do when you don't know what's going to happen next? That is Saul's dilemma. He's so used to knowing what's going to happen next. This is new territory for him. For us, this is everyday territory. We like to pretend it's not. But we don't know what's going to happen next. People will claim 2024 is going to be my year. I'm destined. You have no idea what you're destined for. I prefer it that way, actually. I don't want to know what happens next. I just want to live while it's happening. He consults his 3 ways of finding out what God wants him to do, what's going to happen in this battle. None of it's working. He gets a little frustrated. So Saul then said to his attendants, "Find me a woman who is a medium, who is an owner of a pit, so I may go and inquire of her." So he inquires of the Lord. That doesn't work. So now he's going to go and inquire of a witch. I think Saul feels like he doesn't have any options left. He has to know what's going to happen next, or he cannot move. He cannot proceed unless he knows what's going to happen next. "There's one in Endor," they said. So Saul disguised himself, putting on other clothes, and at night he and 2 men went to the woman. "Consult a spirit for me," he said, "and bring up for me the one I named." So Saul's in disguise. You guys know my joke. I always picture him with those glasses with the nose and the mustache. No one will recognize me now. Like Superman when he's Clark Kent. Spoiler alert, Clark Kent is Superman. I don't know if you knew that. He disguises himself. Now, a king would have royal garb, royal clothes. He takes off royal clothes and puts on common clothes so that no one will recognize him. Now, remember, they don't have pictures and images and things like that of Saul, so if he's not wearing royal clothes, they probably actually won't know who he is. So he disguises himself because he doesn't want anyone to know, lest a witch, that the king of Israel was consulting a witch, because he's already expelled them, and all witches are supposed to die. So it's a very precarious position for both of them. It says, "Bring up the one I want to talk to." Any guesses as to who he might want to talk to? Samuel. Samuel's always been able to tell him what's going to happen next. Even when it's bad for Saul, at least Samuel tells him, this is what's going to happen next. But the woman said to him, "Surely you know what Saul has done. He has cut off the mediums and spiritists from the land. Why have you set a trap for my life to bring about my death?" So she is scared. Because I'm not actually supposed to be here, and now you want me to go into a ditch and perform magic for you? Is this a setup? Is this a sting operation to rout out all the mediums and spiritists? I could die by helping you. Saul swore to her by the Lord, "As surely as the Lord lives, you will not be punished for this." Now, of course, the only guy that can say that would be a king. Nice disguise, Saul. 3 sentences in, you've already revealed yourself. Then the woman asked, "Whom shall I bring up for you?" "Bring up Samuel," he said. When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out at the top of her voice and said to Saul, "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul." The king said to her, "Don't be afraid. What do you see?" So he doesn't see it, but she does. "What do you see?" The woman said, "I see a ghostly figure." You'll see another asterisk there. It actually says, "I see Elohim." I see gods coming up out of the earth. "What does he look like?" he asked. "An old man wearing a robe is coming up," she said. Now, something to know about Samuel is, I would never say this to his face, but Samuel's a mama's boy. Because Samuel always wore the robe that mama made for him. Now, you would not say this to his face because Samuel is also a very dangerous individual. But Saul recognizes him immediately by his clothes. "So an old man wearing a robe is coming up," she said. Then Saul knew it was Samuel, and he bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up? I was quite comfortable where I was. What are you going on and on and on about? Why are you doing all this?" Saul said, I am in great distress. The Philistines are fighting against me, and God has departed from me. He no longer answers me, either by prophet or dreams. So I have called on you to tell me what to do. Samuel said, why do you consult me now that the Lord has departed from you and become your enemy? Now that's a scary enough thought in and of itself, that God has become your enemy. The Lord has done what he predicted through me. In other words, you don't need a special revelation. I've already told you before I was dead. Now you come and bother me when I'm dead to tell you the same thing I told you when I was alive. The Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hands and given it to one of your neighbors, to David. You see, Saul is frozen by fear. Look at the lengths he went to try and see the future. Consulting mediums, dressing up in disguise, going down into a ditch, conjuring up the dead. The whole story is fantastical. I love the story. And the whole reason he does any of it is because he is afraid. The Philistines are there. He doesn't know what his chances are. Are we going to win? Are we going to lose? This is actually a theme throughout Saul's life and actually David's life and many of the kings. They would often inquire of God before a battle, who's going to win? And then we'll decide if we're going to fight. But unfortunately, that's not normally how fights work. Normally, you try to determine before if you think you're going to win, but you're not going to be certain that you're going to win. Because anything can happen. So Saul, before he can do anything, before he can wage battle, before he can go to war, before he can do anything at all, he has to know the future. Surprise, we thought we were on a New Year's sermon. We're still in Unlocking Wisdom because Ecclesiastes has a lot to say about knowing the future. I'm going to read a lot of verses, but I can summarize it for you. Here's what it says about knowing the future. You can't. There it is. Do you know how much time we spend worrying about the future? Some of the passages we've already read in Ecclesiastes talk about a man who's accumulated much wealth and gardens and treasures and harems, and he has all this stuff, and he thinks, this is all meaningless because I'm going to die and my knucklehead son is going to get it. Or, who knows what's going to happen once I'm gone? Precisely. You don't know. Nobody knows. But we spend so much time chasing the future that we don't live today. Or we spend so much time living in the past that we don't live today. Don't be like Saul and think that you have to know everything to move. Just move. Ecclesiastes chapter 11. Invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8. You do not know what disaster may come upon the land. This is the classic, don't put all your eggs in one basket scenario, right? I know that this one thing I'm going to do, it will succeed, it will prosper. You don't know. So why are you putting everything, all your hopes and dreams and finances and family time, you're putting it all in this basket? Koheleth, the teacher, says, that's a bad idea. Do you know why it's a bad idea? Because you don't know. So, for those of you who are investors, diversify. Because you'll have a better chance of having 1 out of 8 that'll win. Rather than 1 out of 1. You could have really good odds to get 1 out of 1. Your odds are increased if you diversify. But the point of it isn't diversify your investments. The point of it is you don't know the future. Diversifying is a way of you recognizing with humility that you don't know what's going to happen. There are so many people, wise people, smart people, financially savvy people who have lost everything because they saw it. It was too good to be true, and it was too good to be true. And they sunk everything into one thing, and they lost everything. Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. Do you have any idea what this is saying? Me neither. Let's move on. No, I'm just kidding. If you have a garden that you want to plant, and you're constantly checking the weather to see if this is the right time, you're trying to see, well, what's going to happen tomorrow? So you're looking at the sky, looking at the wind, looking at the clouds, will it rain, will it do this? You'll never plant your seed because you're so afraid of what will or will not happen tomorrow, you won't do anything today. You just sit there with seed in your hand. Seed doesn't do any good in your hand. But you're frozen by fear because you don't know what tomorrow will bring. You don't know what it will bring, so you do nothing. It reminds me of the parable of the talents. Oh, I knew you were a fearsome owner, and I was very afraid, so I did nothing because I was afraid. If you're watching the wind, you're not going to plant your plant. If you're looking at the clouds, if it's going to rain, you'll never plant your seed. And if you don't plant it, it will not grow. It won't even have a chance. A seed in your hand has a 0% chance of producing. A seed in the ground has some chance, but it might not grow. You don't know. When I was growing up, we had a garden, and when we wanted corn, we would plant more than one stalk of corn. We'd plant rows and rows by hand in our garden because we knew if we planted more, we have a better chance of getting corn. And we were right. Every stalk and area, we put 3 seeds in each spot because we weren't sure which of those 3 would grow, but we knew if we put 3, chances are at least one of them would. And almost always, one of them did. You don't know the future. Don't let that scare you. Nobody knows the future. Stop looking. Oh, what about this? What about... Live your life. Live your life. As you do not know the path of the wind or how the bones are formed in a mother's womb, so you cannot understand the work of God, the maker of all things. You know, there's so much about life that we don't understand and we don't know. And that's okay. You don't have to know everything. You just need to trust the maker of all things. And it's funny, Will, when I got your text message, I was like, is Will a prophet? Will sent me a text message this morning. It's like, here's some thoughts on Ecclesiastes. He's like, those are basically the thoughts I'm sharing this morning. This is amazing. Apparently not as amazing as I thought it was, because you guys don't seem to be as into it as I am right now. But you should have seen the text message. When I read it, I was like, he's going to like today's sermon then. It's not about knowing the future. Listen, you don't need to deal with your past because God has dealt with your past. You don't need to deal with your future because God's in charge of your future. Just live. Just live. You don't know what's going to happen. Don't let that bother you. Let that encourage you. Because no matter what you do, it could go well or it could go badly. And we can sit around, we can overthink it all of our lives with seed in our hand and never do anything. Because we're so afraid. So afraid of what the future will bring. Sow your seed in the morning. And at evening, let your hands not be idle, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. You have your plans for the future. Do them. Just do them. And trust that God's going to be with you along the way. Just do your plans. And again, this verse has some diversification in it. Maybe you have a couple different ideas. Do both of them. One of them might work. Maybe they'll both work, but you don't know what's going to happen. So just, thank you, Nike, just do it. So many preachers downgrade, just do it, but I tell you, no, just do it. Live. For who knows what is good for a person in life during the few and meaningless days they pass through like a shadow? Who can tell them what will happen under the sun after they are gone? You know, some people, when they set up their will and testament and they go on to the next generation and they're going to split up their properties and investments and stuff to all the kids, they try to set it up so everyone makes wise decisions with what they get once you're gone, right? But you don't know. The person that you thought would do really well with something, they might be a total moron, and you just missed it all your life. You don't know. You don't know what's going to happen after you're gone, so why are you worried about it? Worrying about the past and worrying about the future. But you're alive today. You might not even make it to tomorrow. A girl that I was friends with in high school, her husband had a massive heart attack yesterday. Same age as me. Had no signs of any ill health. He's still alive, thankfully. You don't know what's going to happen in life. Life sneaks up on you and snatches things away from you or gives you things. And yet we worry and we worry. But why are we so worried? You worry about what might happen in 10 years. You might be dead tomorrow. And you spend all today worrying about 10 years from now. You didn't even make it to tomorrow. You're not worried about 20 years from now, are you? You're not worried about anything because you're dead. Again, Ecclesiastes uses death as a way of, it's not the enemy in Ecclesiastes, it's the cure. In some ways, life is the problem. It's not really life that's the problem, it's the way that we approach it. And he says, death equalizes all of that. So why are you so worried about tomorrow and about this and about that? None of it really matters. Just live today. Just live today. You guys ready for some New Testament wisdom? One of my goals when I started this series was to incorporate from old and new. Some of you might know exactly where I'm going to go to this. What book of the Bible might I go to the most for proverbial wisdom from the New Testament? Correct, the book of James. Very good. We won't tell anyone in the video that no one said anything. James chapter 4. Now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. It says, if that's your plan, listen to what he's going to say. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist, you are a hevel. If this were Hebrew, it's that you are hevel, you are meaningless. That appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will. Not, I know it's the Lord's will, but if it is the Lord's will. We will live and do this or do that. This is our life. Our life is not built on certainties of what's going to happen tomorrow. Our life is built upon maybes. Maybe if I do this, this will happen. If it's the Lord's will, this will transpire. But you don't know if it is or isn't. What James says here, he doesn't say, so don't make plans to go to the city and don't do any work. He says, no, just recognize the fact that as you're living your life and making your plans that you don't know. You just don't know, and that's okay. We aren't supposed to know. We're supposed to trust. We aren't supposed to know. So just trust. Trust that God is with you every step of the way of whatever decision you make. You're not going to mess it up so bad that God can't fix it. So why are we so afraid all the time? all the time. Verse 16, as it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes because you think you know the future. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this, and it's going to go well, and I'm going to buy that, and you're going to have more money. Nobody knows any of that. All such boasting is evil. Some strong words from James. If you're looking for a New Year's resolution, choose wisdom. Choose to be wiser. Choose to live more wisely. A friend of mine on Facebook posted, he goes, for New Year's resolutions, like 3 or 4 days ago, you should pick patience. And I said, I can't wait that long. Choose to live wisely. Because wisdom recognizes that there's so little in life that we have control over. We can't control the past. We don't know the future. So don't worry about any of those things. Just live today. Make your plans, do what you do, but just recognize that you don't know how it's all going to turn out. And that's okay. You don't have to know. Just trust. Just trust God. Happy New Year.